Hey guys, so this week we are going to try and see if we can get the body all the way down on the chassis pan. There's a lot of cutting left to do, a lot of little bits of fitting here and there that we've got to get figured out, but we're just going to work our way through it, try and get everything done so that we can get this thing set as far down as we need to. Once we get this body lowered all the way down onto the chassis pan, that's going to inform us about the problem I talked about with the windshield versus the cowl and all the other alignments that we're trying to make work on this. So let's get stuck into some cutting, see if we can't figure out how to get this thing all the way down. Making those cuts got us a fair bit further down, but next up I think the area I left on the Tahoe for the fuel filler is the thing that's interfering the most, so we're gonna have to figure out what to do about that and how best to do it. But just to show you guys, so you can see here, this was some pretty burly metal. That I cut out. It was a pretty hefty chunk. Eventually we'll have to cut out that bottom too. But I cut that out on both the sides. That let us come down a lot further. But next up, we are basically sitting on all of this body back here. That lighting blows. Come on. There, that's slightly not really any better, but hey. So we are sitting basically on these body sections back here. And there's absolutely no reason. For some reason, I was thinking that was an exposed gas cap, that it didn't have a gas cap door on it, but it does. Which means there's absolutely no reason for me to be trying to keep this one. So, alright, next step is going to be just doing some more cutting back here and trying to be careful not to, light anything on fire. So, here we go. It's just occurred to me that I was making some assumptions about how even I was side to side, forgetting I had never actually centered it. I don't think I needed to remove anywhere near what I just did. But in counterpoint, it also probably doesn't matter at all because of how I still have to relocate all of this quite a bit. So I probably had to cut all that crap out, and may even have to cut the rest of this backing body out as well. And if I want something like that in here, just have to build it myself, or as I sit here talking about it, there's a whole cover plate that goes on inside this vehicle. So, yeah, I think the next thing I need to do is probably just really square the Tahoe up under this body. Well, that took a little while. Did the front, centered up the back, then double check, or had to check the front again. It was a little off for moving the back. Fix that up. Everything looks like it's pretty reasonably square now. I think everything below this point at minimum needs to come out. So I've got a corner over here. I've got that kick out up front. So I think all of that needs to come out next. Alright guys, we're getting closer and closer. So I ended up cutting off this whole section here of the Tahoe, because what I'm thinking is once I figure out everything going on up inside of this, I can actually just lay that piece back in and maybe lap weld it. I've got a bunch of lap welds. They've got a whole bunch of lap welds in here anyway. So figure if I just do a halfway decent job lap welding it or even butt welding it, whatever I decide to do, then I can just put it back in and fit it to whatever's left, which I don't know how much of this I'm taking out. So there's still a bunch of questions to be answered there. But you can see we're down past that. Our next big problem is actually right there, the bumper. But if we look, get snug back here, sorry. I'm currently thinking about moving the Travelall back another inch or two over the Tahoe, moving the body backward. And I think if we were to do that, looking at these two sides, the body would just clear the bumper. So that would also mean that as this came down, it would come to maybe like right here, which is still pretty darn good, even after I add the bumper for depth. Because even if I have to get a slightly longer hitch receiver to use this hitch, that means I can reuse the factory hitch, not worry about it. I don't really feel like I would need to add any frame, quote unquote, because the bumper is so solidly mounted, it may as well be a bolted on frame extension. I would just need to build up from here and install a new floor pan to meet the body. So that's one of the things I'm looking at right now. But our next job is just, we've got to actually remove the edges of the bumper here, I think, in order to make this all work. So next step is to start taking apart and cutting apart the bumper. I just realized I was doing all this wearing one of my good beanies, the ones I don't like to wear in the shop to get dirty. Dang it, that's got a big old dirt mark on it. I'll have to wash it. So we'll need to cut it about there and cut more of the inner wheel well out, and then maybe come across here somewhere and around to finish cutting that piece out. So that is our next interference, and that should, I think, get us low enough that we're down to the rockers. There still might be some other things here and there, but that's our next big one. All right, we're getting there now. Now it looks like I'm caught on the dash here. And hopefully on the dash here. You can't see Jack there. Let me try that again, sorry. There we go. We're caught in a different place, but yes, we're still catching. And what about in the back? Well, we're almost down to the rocker. We're just 3 fingers off the rockers now. So that's good. Making progress. Those are all closing in. That's probably cut back well enough, but might need a little bit more in that corner. Bumper clears, side and back. All of this is clearing, so we're good there. Okay, so the Travelall just keeps narrowing as it goes up. I think you can see that there. It's got a nice angle on it here. So I think what I'm going to have to do is come in and cut it somewhere up in here and then do a pie cut down this to tip this face out a little farther to clear the dash. So I think that's our next step, is trying to pie cut all of this so that we can kick that out some. All right, here we go. I think that's the door hinge reinforcement plate right there. I'm not sure what's going on up here, but I think this plate wraps all the way in and welds in over here. So I may have just made a very big mistake that's going to take some effort to really figure out how to fix. But I had to cut the dashboard, or I had to cut this, so... Alright, now that we did all that damage to the body that I'm not sure what I'm going to do anything about, I think I'm going to try cutting like 1/2 inch out of this dashboard here. Because really, all that's in this upper section is a vent for the side window. This has a little bit of movement to it, so I could probably even hammer that out of the way some. Some of this can be cut back even farther without any problem, if necessary. And I don't really plan to run this dashboard in the long run, so if it's a little haggard over here on the side, maybe that's not the biggest deal. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just cut this upper section off here and go from there. Alright, seems like we're as low as we're going to get with that maneuver. So I think maybe I need to try cutting a little bit off of the outside of that. See if I can get enough clearance. I do have to be cautious. That doesn't help anything. I do have to be cautious in here so that I don't cut the bracket that those are on. But I think that's going to be our next step, which might mean I just do a little bit of grinding and cleaning and just weld a patch back into that and decide that was a terrible idea on my part. Yeah, well, they happen. Well, the camera didn't record, but I cut that all completely out because it was hanging up on the rocker on the Travelall. And now I have to figure out some more cutting in here. All the weight is on the Tahoe, but I'm not quite sure. Oh, that's where. Oh, that is where all the weight is sitting, on the lower rocker lip there. I think that's where it's resting on both sides. And we've got that much space between the Travelall and the dash. Let's look at the other side here, see if it's the same. Yeah. It seems to be, you can't see anything. Seems to be sitting a little bit higher, but I bet if I gave it a good firm shake even, it might settle some more. Or not. Seems to be more or less where it's stuck for now. Okay. These cross pieces underneath the Travelall, the lower rocker section. This straight bit here, it's flat and straight all the way down. And they're really kind of hammered, but would also be very simple to recreate. So I think I might be better off if I just lift the Travelall up and cut those off for now, and then bring the Travelall back down, and then I can try to figure out how to reattach them, or to build new ones and attach them to the Tahoe rockers as necessary. And obviously this plastic garbage needs to come out and everything, but for now I'm just still trying to figure it all out. Alrighty. So at this point, I'm not completely sure what's binding up. I rolled down the windows so that I could see in some. Just made a few more cuts, places it might be binding. I may have to solve the last little bit of clearance with the BFH on the Tallhoe, or on the Travelall itself. So, we'll see. Alright, so what I figured out is, right in here somewhere, right on the inside of this somewhere, it's hanging up on that bracket, and that's true on both sides. So what I did is I cut out more of all this completely, and then this one's already cut across the top, so I cut in across the bottom, so that will allow me to fold this out. And how I choose to fix it later, you know, whatever, but for now that will at least allow me to figure out if that's the last of the clearance issues around the dash. If that is, then we're in a really good place. So, let's get stuck in to bending these over somehow. You can see there, it should continue to clear. That thing's bent out of the way enough, it should just continue to clear, so that should be fine there. Looks like the next problem is right there. This corner here, it only goes back like an inch, inch and a half under there, but that corner is now hanging up on the lower box here. So I am going to go ahead and raise that back up and maybe just put a slice in the rocker there and just hammer it out of the way. You can actually see on this one, there's some scraping and body damage where the corner was hanging up. So just got to do the same thing over here. I think there's a really good chance it's just going to hang up on this next step down. But I just got to work my way down it. I'm just trying to understand everything. I want to leave as much intact as possible. I just feel like that's the best way of doing this. So I just want to understand each step instead of just hacking away everything wholesale and then realizing there's a lot more reconstruction that I need to do than I realized. Making progress, finding more issues. I'm still hanging up on this bracket back here. So I'm going to have to kind of angle that bracket back, but I think that should be totally doable. I don't think that's a problem. Over here, we've got, this is an aluminum bracket that's in here, and it looks like we're running into that some more. So we may need to bend that flange farther over on this side to keep going. And we are getting pretty darn snug on the dash, so I may have to cut a little bit more of the dash out. Alright, I didn't have the camera on, but I just cut that back. You can see the chunk I cut out of that. We'll just have to see what the dashboard does. And then over on that side, oh, I still need to bend that flange some more, but I pulled the gauge bezel face off because I think that was the biggest thing that was hanging up. So I will get that bent back and then we will try lowering this thing again. Alright, I just used a hammer and lightly tapped these over a little bit farther for some more clearance. Here we go again. Clearing some more of that out. Looked like it was still hanging up there. And noticed that. I hit the freaking wiring right there with the grinder. So I'm going to have to fix all of those. Dummy. I love adding work. It's awesome. Wherever this front clip is hanging up, it's pretty solidly hanging up. Alright guys, I've been continuing the fitment process on this, and as I was looking everything over, I realized I had rolled the Tahoe a little bit too far forward under the body, so I was really close to the front end of these rear wheel wells. Moving that back a little bit meant I had to make a couple more modifications, and now as I'm lowering the body, the wheel tub itself here is starting to catch on the Tahoe. I've thought that might be a problem, but I was avoiding it until I absolutely had to. So at this point, I think the best option is going to be remove this entire panel here. There's a lot of rust underneath it that's going to need repair anyway, and so if I pull this out, my thought is that I can pull this out, finish fitting the body, and then I can refit these inner panels as bolt-in panels so that I can still keep that visual aesthetic that I want to keep of the interior back here. So I remove this bracket here. Going to start making some cuts in places where I think I can come back and turn it into a bolt point. And we'll go from there. Alright, so with the wheel tubs completely cut out, there's nothing really holding the back end up anymore. So I put in this bar here that hopefully will come down and catch on the bumper. And that should be enough to hold the back end up at least somewhat, though I think it actually needs to be held up a little higher than this will do. But I can maybe put a board under it or something. I don't know. We'll figure that out. First, we got to find out if this even works.
So this was my first opportunity to really step back from the Travelall and see just how it was really all working out. That's the whole reason that we pulled this thing out of the garage. Really want to just step back and look at the level and look at the fitment. So here I realized that the body was set back about 3/4 of an inch farther back than I wanted. I intended the Tahoe and the Travelall fenders to line up right there, and they weren't. Even though we had lined them up earlier, something had just shifted while we were messing with it in the 20 odd times we had raised it up and brought it down. But discussing where do these things line up, did we get it in the right place, etc. And so this was really just all done so that we could see how well this was working out. And then how level did I want it to sit, how did the body lines look. Again, just looking at level, how the rocker compared to the Tahoe rocker, if it looked level across from the Travelall's rocker and the running boards. Just trying to really get my brain around how all these pieces are sitting with where I have them right now, and how I want them to sit. Well guys, I filmed a sweet outro, but apparently I don't have it. So this is what you get, an overlay over some photos. So to really get a grasp on how everything was fitting, we decided to test fit the front end on this. Even see how the Travelall radiator support would fit, everything. The wheel well is my biggest concern on the front end. I don't like how high it sits, I don't like how far forward it sits, but this vehicle does have a 3-inch shorter wheelbase. So what I'm looking at doing is probably cutting the wheel arch out of this fender, lowering it a couple inches, moving it back a couple of inches, and then backfilling the fender to really get the look and fit that I want overall. Sorry for the extra long video and for the lame outro just dubbing over some photos, but I really wanted to give you guys a deep look in just how many tries it takes to try and figure something like this out. So that's why I just kept going on the in-depth information. Anyway guys, thanks for sticking with me through this. I really feel like I'm ending the week on a pretty high note, so I'm excited to figure out what the next steps are going to be and really start making sure I can lock all of this together. Thanks guys. See ya.